Audio check, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. We'll be with you shortly. Good morning, everybody. Trying something new today on the old Rumble stream. We'll see how it goes. Let's get the comment clock going here. Comment machine, I should say. See if it's working. Where is our Bitcoin price? There it is. Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to DYOR Live. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Striking, here in the digital media world. So glad to be hosting this wonderful show once again. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, it's April 3rd, 2025. I'm without my partner in crime, Pedro Garcia. He'll be with us later. So you've got me. You've got good old Striking here. Anyway, theme of the show today, tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. If you're a fan of the old show Brady Bunch, it's like Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. That's right. The tariffs have taken effect, and the markets do not like it. Now, that being said, Mr. Trump did say there will be tough times and pain. Boy, that's an awful commercial. And pain in the markets. He expects it to go down. If you've listened to Pedro over the past couple of days, he's talked about how the markets will be going down as a result, not from tariffs, but from the general conditions of the market. They were going down anyway. They've been flying high lately, and they needed a correction. Pedro, if you recall, was talking about Bitcoin going down to... he quizzed me on it yesterday, and I forgot it already. But into the 70s, again, that he was likely going to do that, and he was wanting to buy it there. So that's where we're going. Welcome to everybody on Rumble. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Remember to hit that like button and share it. Please share the show with everyone you know. Anyway, we'll be getting into the markets here in a little bit. Anyway, Bitcoin is down now with the tariff news and the kind of the sell-off from Asia last night. They didn't appreciate getting all these tariffs, and so what they did is they sold their Bitcoin. I still don't understand why, since Bitcoin was invented, bad news in the markets, Bitcoin went up. And if the US dollar got stronger, Bitcoin went down. If the US dollar got weaker, Bitcoin went up. Now Bitcoin just trades in line with the NASDAQ and S&P 500. And Pedro's explained it to me a million times. I know he has. But I still don't get it. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got Pedro in my ear talking to me right now. He'll be on in just a moment. He's going to give a quick rundown of the markets before he has to run off for the day. And if the Ice Raid project launches today, they're debating whether to launch or not, and these terrible markets. They're waiting to see how Solana does. If it continues to tank, they're going to hold off on their launch. But if Solana pulls off, or if Solana starts a rebound today, then they may launch. But usually on bad days, it's not good to put anything new into the market. Hold on, let me bring Pedro's mic up here because he's already entertaining me. Good morning, Pedro Garcia. What is going on?
Good morning. How are you? How is everybody doing?
Doing well. We've got our usual big crowd on Rumble and small crowd on YouTube.
Oh, well, I'm glad to have everybody here. No matter where you are, where you're coming from, you all rock the mic, and me and Tom love every last one of you guys. So thank you for being here. And I don't care what those people say about you guys. I like you, darn garnet. So, yeah, man, it's been a crazy day. We talked about this. This wasn't anything that we weren't like shocked. We talked about this area potentially being the stopping point here.
1 second, Pedro. I've got to get your.
That's all right. And I'm about to come on live here in a second. So I was running a little late. I forgot that I was supposed to have I was going to hang out with a friend of mine. He basically beat cancer. And so a few of his friends, and I included, are going to go and kind of celebrate it. And so I was getting everything. And all of a sudden I realized, I was like, oh, shoot. Because I like taking my showers at night, you know? And so I kind of look like a homeless guy. Tom hung out with me. You know that. And, listen, man, you better... Like, it's best to look like you poor, man. Just the homeless guy is the best way to go. Just ask Jesus, right?
It worked okay for him until they put him on a cross.
Oh, this is true.
Everything was great for him until it wasn't.
Yeah, until it wasn't.
People washing his feet. He washed other people's feet.
He washed a lot of people's feet. He first washed people. But the thing is, guys.
Then they put him up on a cross, and all the good things ended for him.
That's funny. That's actually really funny. But like ultimately, this market is doing exactly what we expected that it was going to do. And like I said, it gave us a couple turning points here on the chart here. I said we can do
I'm having trouble bringing up your chart here, Pedro. Give me 1 second.
It's okay.
I think,
but go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think we logged in backwards or something here. I'm just gonna put this BidFi logo up there when I got you. Here, feed.
Excellent. Is it? Yes. Is it this Sunday that is not Christmas, but Easter Sunday?
The 20th.
Oh, that's what it is. The 20th. Yes. You are right. Yes. It's really interesting that what we're seeing in the market here. So you got Powell coming out tomorrow. He's going to be talking about rates and what he's thinking about. So we're going to see some really interesting things kind of correlate with that tomorrow. We could see Powell come in and say we're going to lower rates here. We talk about rates here all the time. Probably many of you guys get very frustrated with me, but hey, these are important things that affect crypto now. So you can see here, and honestly, I can truly say that we already see crypto following rates with the interest rates over here. So when interest rates go down, we actually see many staking interest rates, which is really interesting because it has no correlation, but it should be going towards the fee base, but it actually follows the interest rates for your interest rate that you would get back, or your percentage that you would get back. So it kind of frustrates me, at least with crypto, because I feel like they're kind of scamming us in a little way. So like in that sense, right? Like I know that there's more money to be given for your APY on many. anyways, I don't even go into that because that's a frustration that
Welcome
I deal
Chuck
with.
Jansen to the house. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Fire Chicken himself. Appreciate
Oh,
it.
snaps. And thank you for the rant, my friend. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. You rock, my friend. Boom. Let's go ahead and do a fire chicken. Boom. Love it. Thank you so much for that, bud. Really appreciate that. Shout out to also the few guys that we have. I wish we could actually have more guys who watch us. Like, we had a big viewership on Rumble yesterday.
We did.
Which was pretty. Yeah,
we did.
Really,
we did.
Pretty big.
Rumble gave us some love on the algorithm for some reason and got put us in front of a lot of eyeballs yesterday. It was very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
All it takes is this one or two of you guys to share the Rumble feed.
Yep.
And it helps so much.
Yeah, like it's a real deal. Like just sharing it it's a big deal. Actually, you know what? That's what I'm going to do right now. I'm actually going to repost this and say these guys rock the mic.
As I usually say, welcome everybody joining us on all platforms, X viewers, Twitch, Kick, Facebook. Yeah. I haven't checked in on the Facebook stats in a while. They go like this: nothing, 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 boom, huge. Nothing, 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 boom, huge.
Well, we'll take it. I mean, I'm not gonna sit there and say blasey, blasey, blaz.
Thank you, Chuck, for sharing it. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that helps quite a bit. I think one of the things I really do like about what we see here in crypto, right, with our show is that I feel like even though, we may not have a huge crowd, I really feel like our crowd is engaged and is seriously connected to us and trying to help us out. And I do appreciate that so much because that, that kind of makes it worth it. Honestly, when I sit there and I talk to you guys, and I know like when I go over in detail what's happening in the market, which is like grade A TA, like, many of our people have made money, and I actually, and I know I'm like boosting myself saying that, and I hate to self promote there, but I could just sit back and just do my own thing, and only I would benefit, right? And I'm happy with that, but I'm glad that some of our viewers have taken advantage of the things that I trade and I look to get a part of, and they are very much taking a part
Pedro,
in it.
How are they going to benefit from what you see in Bitcoin right now? Obviously, the markets are all roiled because of tariffs, but you were calling the market lower before the tariff talk came around anyway.
And we talked about even at the beginning of this week here that I didn't trust this rally, that the 8-period moving average, along with this zone or potential the 94, 92 area here, potentially could be turning points in the market. I didn't expect us to go any much higher. I said we potentially really kind of could go to this upper level here, but I really didn't see it happening. I really saw us kind of playing here. So we're playing right now between this level here on the 50-period moving average, was sitting at that 74,000, and I'm expecting us to actually go lower here. And so it's really important to understand that as we start to go lower here, that you might see an acceleration. Now, this may be paused if Powell tomorrow comes in and says we're going to lower rates because we're seeing that tariff rates are going to have issues, right? And so because of that, we'll lower rates, which may bring a boost in the market. But ultimately, I do feel that the NASDAQ, which is what we've seen a correlation, we keep talking about, I keep talking about us seeing a correlation in crypto, right, with the actual market, meaning the NASDAQ, and there's a 3-to-1 ratio. So when the NASDAQ goes down, let's say $2,000, we see a drop in the Bitcoin price, which goes down, 6,000, which is what we're watching. We're literally seeing this play out. And so I do expect the NASDAQ to get down to about 10,000, which hence would typically put BTC around, let's say, it'd be 10,000, 30,000 right now. It'd be 50,000, potentially down to 30,000. I think they're going to try to tap below that 30,000 area because of what we're seeing in the market at large. So, meaning, and I've talked about this at other times. I don't want to go into details. If you guys can see what I was talking about over at one of the technical Tuesdays with the mining situation. But ultimately, what I expect is seeing Bitcoin come down even further. And it's like I've said, it's not going to be overnight, but you can see here that we don't have a lot of liquidity, buyer liquidity, as we go up. So people would rather buy Bitcoin at lower prices, and the next lower price will basically be down either at that 73, 75, or much lower, which is going to be the next area around that 50,000. So if we lose footing at that 75, the next footing that we're going to catch is at 50,000. So be ready for that. I think it'll be quick, right? As we and one of the biggest things that we can sit there and see is we saw a big old fatty wick right here where we sold off. Same similar situation.
And you're looking at the daily chart.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's how you really gauge from a TA perspective, the long term. You look at the daily, weekly, and monthly.
Right. Well, yesterday we kind of saw that. I mean, that big wick yesterday. We saw craziness when Trump was speaking. You know, he was speaking in the market up, down, up, down, up, down, and all around. So that, in my mind, that wick is kind of an outlier, but still people selling there. And so since this, and I brought it up as the daily chart because it's going to it could take a little bit for this to play out. You know, if you look, a little bit out, it's in every candle is a day. So it may not be today. It's going to 50,000, but
oh yeah, definitely not. Oh my! I mean, you never know.
Right? No, just just a boop.
Yeah, I mean, we understand how crypto
Michael Saylor
works,
sells $400 billion in Bitcoin. Boop.
Right, like, and all of a sudden it just changes everything, right? So it's just one of those things. We'll see as it happens, but it is something that could be possibly see here in the future.
The general sentiment about Bitcoin is people are, and then when I say people, I mean all the other people that talk into a microphone about Bitcoin. They seem to be on, and I'm going to leave out the clickbaity guys, but the people that seem to seriously talk about Bitcoin are on the fence. They're like, is it going to be a bull market or is it going to be a bear market? Is it going to be a bull market or is it going to be a bear market? Are we in, was 107,000 the high for this cycle? And are we just going to now consolidate between 50 and 80 now for the next few years? Or is this just part of the normal cycle? Because it's apparently the pattern is very similar. Like if you look at go back to 2010 and you compare the patterns, but it's starting to, the chart is starting to roll over at the top. And so the general sentiment is that there's no sentiment, that people are confused on what the market's doing. And whether this Bitcoin cycle is going to follow the other ones and have a massive run. I mean, when we saw the optimism, Pedro, at the, last fall, or even last summer, we were like, it's going to 250, it's going. The money's pouring into the market. Well, the money stopped pouring into the market. As we can see, the prices come down a lot. And so the question remains, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? Is it going to be are we long-term bear market now? Or is this just all noise and it's just getting ready to pump as normal?
It's interesting because I don't think it's just that simple, money flowing in and flowing out of the market, because people can buy into the market on OTC.
That's true.
Right, which basically doesn't have a impact on the chart, but we can see millions of dollars coming into the market without price impact, right? And based off where their cost basis is in their OTC buy, which basically is like going through the back door, you go in, you make a market, and this is stuff that we saw. If you ever want to see something similar, what I'm talking about, go check out The Big Short. There's a great scene on it where the guy buys a bunch of puts and basically says, do we have a market? And that's what an OTC buy is. It's basically just guys that have a bunch of supply on something being able to make a market. And there's a fee that is done, but what happens is it doesn't affect the market there.
Right, that's a good question, Pedro. We should look into that and see if one of the websites that tracks Michael Saylor's purchases and Strategy's purchases, if where he buys all his stuff. Be interesting to find out. I bet you he calls like all the major miners and say, I've got $1 billion. Do you want some of it? And then they're like, okay, here's some of our Bitcoin. And he probably spreads out. I can't imagine he just has a Coinbase account and just says, give me $1 billion worth. He's probably has a trading desk that goes out and sources it from people. It'd be interesting to find out.
It all depends on what he wants to do, but ultimately, I think he does do a little bit of both. He wants to have an impact on the chart to show, that he does something with it. We do see it push up, and I think he does probably buy OTC buys that then allow him to make a market at a lower price. But we know that because his stuff is very open on where his price point is, it's around $70,000. So we're about, a $10,000 mark here, which is really about another 2,000 point drop on the NASDAQ. And the NASDAQ has, we're kind of sitting at this point in the NASDAQ where if we fall below the lows of today and we get below that, let's say tomorrow, there's nothing there to hold us below that 18.5 area on the NASDAQ. That's this area right here. And so if the NASDAQ goes below that 18.5, which Chris Cuteman, my friend and fellow trader, which is about right here, this is the 400 period, that's this area right here, right? That's that, or 14.3 area. That's this area right here. Below this is all traded. Like this is the only fresh zone. Besides here, these are all zones that have been traded through. Like this right here was traded. Here's your gap. It was traded through. Here's another area right here, bounced off of this area. This area bounced off of this area. This area bounced off of that area. That area bounced off of this area. So this right here is the only fresh zone where there's real buyers potentially that haven't been absorbed. So the next area that we're going to see is all the way down into this lower level right here of that 1440 area or 1424 area. And so we're talking, that's 4,000 point drop, and you multiply that by 3. That's how much? 3 times 4,000.
Sorry, I was reading Grok 12, about 000. How Michael buys his Bitcoin.
It's all right. But it would be around 12,000 points that BTC would drop, which then put BTC down around that 75,000 area, potentially even further. So that's where we're kind of looking at the market at large. Ultimately, though, we don't necessarily know what it's going to do and how it's going to do it, right? But I can only gauge what I'm looking at the market and saying, okay, well, that looks about right. So ultimately,
sorry about that, Pedro. According to Grok, Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy use a number of large institutional firms to buy the Bitcoin, and they give them somewhat advanced notice. And specifically, it mentions Grok knows this because in their SEC filings, they mentioned using Coinbase, which I know Coinbase has an OTC desk.
Yeah.
So they probably give Coinbase, heads up, like, this week we're going to be funding $1 billion, and so start gathering Bitcoin.
I wonder how much they have. They've been in the game from the beginning. So, when did they actually come out as a, wasn't it when Bitcoin was around 100 or was it around 1,000? That's when I feel like that's how far they've been around.
Coinbase has been around a long time, yeah.
Yeah, so I would assume that they got stacks.
So just the other day, according to the SEC filings for MicroStrategy, they bought $1.92 billion of Bitcoin. They bought 22,048 Bitcoin at an average price of about $87,000.
Yeah. it's one of those things that but he's playing a dangerous game, just straight up. I know he doesn't see it as it, but he keeps buying and keeps topping off, and this isn't a good thing for him because for his shareholders and everything like that, I've talked about this also ad nauseum, that it makes it too easy for you to mess with micro strategies. If you drop Bitcoin, you can literally pick up for cheap because they don't sell at top dollar, right? When they start to liquidate this stuff.
Right.
So it's
yeah,
like,
no, they take advantage of it. I mean, even just when you get when little people just get stopped out in the markets, you get bad fills and bad pricing. I mean, never mind when they know they got you bent over. Hey, an undamaged Cybertruck just drove by. No key marks on it, no paint.
oh man, okay. Have you seen anything about the Buckazoids?
Labuckazoids? I had a
Yeah,
Labuckazoid at one point in my life. It was very uncomfortable. I had to walk weird and take warm baths.
Buckazoids. It's this stuff that's actually going on potentially about a gentleman who actually might be Satoshi. And so again, it's this new, he's kind of been talked about, but now they're really seeing kind of interlays and interplays because he was an ex-gamer and he played this.
I have no
created
idea
this
what you're
game.
talking about.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So they want me to go kind of talk. One of the guys wants me to talk on about trading and stuff like that, and so he just hit me back up and was like, "Hey man, would you be willing to do this?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. You guys let me know. You guys tell me, would it be okay for me to go and just kind of talk about the markets at large and what's actually going on?" It's real interesting because I'm not a person who really hypothesize about just where the markets are going to go. I mean, excuse me, not where the markets are go. I mean, who are the people who are a part of, the idea of who is Satoshi. Yeah, I'm just not that.
I love the speculation that every once in a while comes out. I mean, the other day, the internet was all a buzz. It's Elon Musk. He did it. And Elon's like, no, he would be happy to take credit for that.
Yeah, he would. He would absolutely. He would be like, yeah, I did do that. Now you caught me. Hey, right?
And then all the crazy liberals would be out there like, oh my God, now I got to sell Bitcoin. I can't own Bitcoin. Oh my God. Ah.
Dude, it would actually be really sad if that would actually. I mean, I would feel bad for the liberals because they will live and die by their dogma, and you're just like, man, how can you hold on to something so strong? But I mean,
crazy. Hey, Pedro, let's talk. I've got the Ice Raid people in the side chat room here talking, figuring out if they're going to launch or not. Let's look at Solana really quickly. See what's going on in that market.
All right. Yeah. Well,
Solana's down 14% today, or 13.4.
Yeah.
How about that?
About them apples. Okay. So we'll jump into this here real quick. Okay. So when we look at the market, we know that I've talked about Bitcoin coming down lower, and we see a correlation between Bitcoin and the NASDAQ, and then also the correlation between Bitcoin and the rest of crypto. Until there's a breakaway, which I've talked about, I think we will see a breakaway between Bitcoin and the rest of crypto. But until that happens, you're going to see that correlation as it drops here.
You've got MicroStrategy on.
I know.
Oh.
So I'm letting you know here so that I'm about to bring that up here because they're not going to like what I have to say here. So again, this is my own opinion. This is what I think. It's not financial advice. But
let me run that right now.
Okay. So personally, I think I want to buy BTC, or I want to buy Solana really down at that 92.63 area to that 79 area. And the fact is that we're seeing an increase of seller volume as we saw sell off here yesterday and today. We're coming down to the lows. Now we're probably going to see a bounce off of this area right here, which is right here. This is going to be liquidity, but it's not going to continue. It's not going to hold if we see Bitcoin and the NASDAQ start to fall off the cliff, which we're kind of at that level there. So I think it's most likely, again, not financial advice, is going to come down to this 93.82 area, to that 79 area. This is where I'm looking to kind of pick up Solana at these levels here. So when it comes down
it's
to
reasonable.
Right. Now, if we keep seeing Solana drop, right? We keep seeing it going, because if the NASDAQ keeps going, then the next step below that 79 is literally down to the 30 and that 1017 area. Okay, so it's a slippery slope. And I know that there are a lot of money and a lot of good things being risked on this. So I think personally, it would be smarter for them to do something where you create, I would have your own blockchain, not necessarily attached to BTC, that can be tied into the market if need be. It gets created, right? Whatever the mechanism. But if it's tied to Solana, and if Solana drops here, which personally I'm betting on, then most likely it's going to go down, because you guys have watched me enough now that when you see me look to take shorts or longs on these cryptocurrencies, they do what I expect. So I would say, because I love what ICE is trying to do, how it is trying to set up and gamify things that need to be gamified in the government, right? And so that it could be smarter. I would think that it would be smart for them to create something of a short-term use, right? Like, we've got our own blockchain, we're doing this, it's not tied to the market, but you can still receive tokens, almost like a 1-to-1 ratio with whatever, however payment system that you're setting up, almost like collectibles, right? And so you can build and say, hey, I got this, and look, and I've got, X amount of baby beanies, until we really do see, some good buys or some really good days where we at least get above the 8-period moving average and start putting higher highs in. That's what I would do personally if I was in charge there.
Or you just launch, and when Solana goes up, then the value of your liquidity pool will go up. Well, they originally picked Solana because when they developed the whole concept, Solana was, a smoking hot place. Pump fund was going crazy. The volume on Solana was nuts. There's lots of money there. And then in the meantime, between coming up with the idea and developing it out into a launchable project and lobbying the government and all this type of stuff, Pump Fund's volume went down by 90%. And the meme coin market came to a grinding halt, which is Solana's volume, mostly. There's a lot of projects developing on Solana, but they're developing. they're not driving huge volume yet. And so there was a thought, well, let's port and move it to BNB because BNB is hot now. And then you're like, well, then you could be chasing blockchains forever.
Yeah, so I was thinking, have you guys create your own blockchain that's going to be outside of the crypto ecosystems.
That's beyond the capability of the guys right now. because the dev team is also developing the Pacioli and audit chain stuff. So their plate's already full. But that would be great. And then if you could develop it in a way that follows some sort of government standards, because there are government standards for blockchain now, and the government would be likely to use it.
Well, here's the other part is if it's developed here and purposely wants to be used for the government, right? It might even get put into a strategic reserve potentially because it holds value by what it does. The Pacioli, which is an American system, right?
America.
Was created America. It potentially could, you know what I'm saying? And if it's kicking butt, it just makes sense to me. You know, why wouldn't you do that? You know, I mean, but again, I know that you guys are doing a lot. And I know that Jason's doing a lot there. So, and he's creating a lot of amazing stuff. I mean, great utility. I mean, and I think in the future, absolutely, it's going to be a rock star. Absolutely. But right now, like, how long did Apple sit in, beta, where Microsoft was screaming up, when did, how long, like the rubber itself was, invented for like 30 years before it would even got, going. And then once it got going, they're like, oh, we can put these on wheels. Look at this, right? And so I just don't want to see that happen with what you guys are doing. And I think you figure out a way to create some form of your own non-attached,
Yeah, no, that is a good point. I mean, that's a good point. But I can see with popularity that happening. Or the government just comes in and says, all right, we're willing to partner with you guys. But the Solana, we can't play favorites with blockchains here. Develop one according to these standards. And then we can do our thing. On a side note, Pedro, I just saw that the Democratic National Party, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, are suing President of the United States over his executive order to block non-citizens from voting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. The idea of
what is going on out here?
I legitly there's stuff to it that seems right. I've listened to some of their arguments. Some seem legit, right? I get it. Some people have a hard time voting, and and having voter ID, it makes it difficult for them. But instead of sending $20 billion over to XYZ, and I don't think that's a large portion in America. I mean, maybe 1%, 2% of the people don't have ID to vote. Why don't we create a fund, right?
It helps those people out.
Yeah, and non-GMO that literally sets them up, and we say, okay, just show us who you are, figure out who we are. We can check your birth records. We can see you can come into a postal office. You know what I'm saying? Create that stuff, and then from there,
I'll tell you why that's not going to work, Pedro. Because the government would set aside $42 billion. $20 billion of it would go to big consulting firms to come up with a plan and to get this thing going. Then another $20 billion would be used to develop outreach strategies and do some commissions and surveys. And then they would come back and say, all right, there's 1 million people in the U.S. that just don't have IDs to vote, and we need another 42 billion to go around and knock on their doors and say, here, let's fix that. And it would and it would take 10 years. That's why. And I learned this because that's how the U.S. government operates, and then the Doge is unpeeling these layers on how these programs operate, and you just can't believe how long things take and how much money.
Speaking of Doge, did you see the new information about? And again, we don't know fully this, and I have my worldview is based off of some of more of right leaning that I think the government is taking advantage of things, but the new information on Social Security and how they found like a couple million people on it receiving Social Security that are literally looks like they're just direct immigrants and they were fully on Social Security as older people, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Do you see that too?
I did see that, and
Yeah.
how an industry has developed
For
with
that.
shady, we'll call them just shady attorneys, giving people advice on how to do this and they take a cut. They're like, all right, we'll get you, $1,000 a month from the U.S. government, and we get $200 of that. And people are happy. They're happy to.
Absolutely. I mean, I think those law firms should receive some slap hands or hands slap hand, hands slap on the hands. Wow, that was really hard to say. And I think it's one of those things that we really need to see what's going on. Like this is scary. And again, that a lot of the far left is saying that's a lie and that's not correct. But it's one of those things I feel that just
Today in Doge, $265,000 canceled for Queens College in New York to research why BIPOC teens read Japanese comic books. $250,000 to erect LGBT historical markers across Ohio.
smart. You know what we could start doing? It's just say Alphabet Plus. I heard somebody say that. I thought it was actually smart.
$400K for the University of Tennessee to study Alphabet Plus library users metadata.
Mm-hmm.
$6.7 million for the California State Library to enhance equitable library programs.
Almost like the cat chasing its tail or a dog chasing its tail.
But then someone follows it up with asking Grok, why do BIPOC teens read Japanese comic books? Grok says, they read Japanese manga for cultural exploration, connecting with diverse characters and engaging through visual storytelling.
There you go, my
Someone
people.
send this to Queens College in New York.
What's even funnier is why was that even proposed? Like, why is that?
I know some of these things. How do they come up with them? They're like,
yeah. Well, I just
we
want to
need
know.
to study that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I hope, again, I hope that there's a real reason behind the reason why, because I start to get stressed out. I got to put on my green glasses to get me chill out.
You look like the Flash.
Doc,
Green Lantern.
Green Lantern. Dude, I don't understand it, dog. Like to me, it's one of those things that I don't understand it. Like I really genuinely want to know. I go through and I read through those kind of a lot of times at the end of the night just to help me go to sleep, right? We're saving money. And the part that blows me away is half of them I'm wondering there has to be a real reason why they pick these things. You know what I'm saying? Like I legitimately think somebody was going, okay, if ever I was to get audited, well, we need to have something really here. So like, you know what? This is a legit thing. Let's find that. Even if they're looking to smuggle money, they pick these things because they just seem so abstract, like left field, that a part of me almost thinks that I think there might be something there, that you could figure out.
The Veterans Administration was paying $380,000 a month for minor website modifications. That contract is now canceled, and the same work is being executed by one software engineer spending under 10 hours a week. $380,000.
Which is nice.
A month.
I wouldn't mind that. I know a guy who makes about $100,000 a day trading, but that's not me. I was busting his chops today. It's actually funny.
Each year, the United States Institute of Peace receives $55 million in congressional taxpayer funds. Prior management would sweep excess funds into its private endowment. That money is now returned to the taxpayers.
There we go. I just think it's interesting when I look at where we're headed and what they're fighting for, what the far left is fighting for. Because again, I don't think the central left really care about half the stuff that is being fought for. It's the far left, and you're watching this actually happen. And then in Congress, you watch these people sit there and, you know, the guy who just completed, what was it, 36 hours of debate or a speech. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah.
And I was sitting there going like, why? He was a left Senate member.
Yeah, it was Booker. It's Cory Booker.
Yep. And I was sitting there going like, bro, like they're trying so hard to, you know, it wasn't a filibuster. It was just him just wanting to speak. One of the most.
So the best part about it, did you see him starting to get all wide-eyed and crazy? Who's one of your favorite comedians? The African American gentleman, really light skinned, who's always got his eyes out like this.
Peel, Peel and Pete.
Yeah, exactly. And he started walking around like him too, like. As soon as I saw him, I'm like, it's him.
Yeah, like legit. Like at first, and you know he's gonna do some type of comedic stuff with that. There's just it adds to. I just think it's crazy. I'm just gonna be quiet. I think it's crazy, dog.
How much time you got here, Pedro?
I've got about 10 minutes before.
All right, that's about all I got too. I got some things I got to take care of here, and then I got to go hang out with the Ice Raid guys for a while. If they launch today, I will come back on the air. If you're around, that's great. If you're not, you're not. And if they do launch, I'll have Miss Pixie from Ladies of Solana on as well. So
there you go. Okay.
I'll let you know what's going on. If you're around, if you are, if you're not, you're not.
So just to give everybody heads up, today, from yesterday around the same time, the market yesterday, our dollar, and I'll just show it right here. And see, you were worth $494,000, $736, and now you are worth $494,000, 804. Your debit here has remained the same though, which is at 32 or $323,048. So you've literally become, each American has become richer by how much? That'd be 70, 64 or 60, yes, $64 you've made. So there you go, America. Each one of us just made a little bit extra cash.
America.
Yo, I'm gonna start checking these out because I just think it's just interesting. It really is interesting. I never knew that was a statistic, and I'm like, let's see how it's growing. So it's really interesting to see Doge also increased $4 billion, which was cool. Which was right here. Yesterday it was at 271 billion saved. Now it's at 275 billion saved. So it's roughly they're hitting about $4 billion a day is what they're saying.
That's just amazing.
Yeah, it really is. Now, obviously, I'm assuming, dude, it's gonna slow down. It's gotta slow down. I hope it slows down. Right? Like I just pray, man, there's just not that much more fraud and abuse. Like
it's just these endless grants. They got to stop. We got to just stop appropriating so much money for all of this shit. Like,
you know what's funny is
spend the money on the military, do some medical research, and make the country look nice. you know what? Good, and take care of Social Security and that type of stuff. All these grants, fuck that. Get rid of them. Start over, turn them all off. Every NGO that gets money from the U.S. government, gone, wiped out. Start over, and bring your. Don't just pitch some congressional staffer that slides it into a massive 10,000-page budget bill. You got to come to the people and say, we need to set up a group that can distribute money to poor people in Africa that have no food. Okay, let's do that, but everything's transparent. No hidden NGOs, no consulting companies like that. We'll say, okay, here's a farmer who's got food. Here's a guy who's got an airplane. And there's a guy who's got a truck in Africa. There you go. Imagine how much food they could actually distribute if they actually used that money for food. You could just move all the people to where the food is. It would be cheaper to do that.
Well, then you would basically be doing what Europe is doing with a lot of south of the equator nations, right? They're just basically saying, oh, you're having our get on in here, and then you're flooding their system and crippling it.
I didn't mean moving it. I meant like, parts of Africa have plenty of food. People choose to live in the desert. If you're not catching it, that was an old Sam Kinison comedy bit. You remember Sam Kinison?
I do remember. Dude, that dude, he's got
move. Move.
Yeah,
remember, move to the food. Move them. He said, "What do you expect? They live in a desert. Move to the food." It was one of the funny. Yeah. He was really good. He was really good.
Yeah, he was. But he would be canceled so quick today.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Like 98% of the comments today would be canceled in history. I mean, can you imagine Jeff Farley, bro? Not Jeff Farley. Even he would be canceled. But why am I Chris Farley? Chris, dude, he was so funny. But he would be like the stuff the fat shaming he did just to himself, dude, or to other people, dog. It would be.
He used to live right down the street here when he was in Second City.
Wow.
His apartment that he lived in, and he lived in it with Adam Sandler and a couple of the other guys at the same time. And
Adam Sandler, dude, those are.
It's become a tourist attraction. This is, and not only that, but the funny thing is that the building everybody points to, it's down on Armitage Street, just down a mile away from here. Everyone points to where they lived. It's actually the building next to it.
That's cool, man. And they were just chilling there, like
it was like a flop house for comedians. They as Second City cycled them through. Now it's a very wealthy area, but in the early '90s, it was just a regular city neighborhood. And it was what's called here in Chicago, 2-flat. There's a store on the bottom and then two apartments above it. And one of them, somebody leased it, but comedians kept cycling through, and as they came in and out, essentially the house where, as Sandler said, a house where everyone did cocaine and slept and stayed up all night and
wrote jokes.
Yep.
It's almost like the Music Train video that they're talking about, those guys in Canada. Oh, I want to talk. We got a few more minutes. I thought it was real interesting. You were talking about Canada earlier. I was in a small conversation with a few traders who were the majority more Canadian. And I said, and I wanted to just know about gold. It was actually my trading coach. And I want to know about his idea of gold and what he expects and what he's seeing. And so I said, we got into government stuff, right? And he was saying basically like Trump and his stuff doesn't equate. And I turned to him, I said, listen, dude, like since the 70s, your country has been subsidized by America taxpayers. Not only just talking about we're going to protect your borders, but that we literally sent you money so that your government could run and then you can distribute off of, and then I could, my spidey sense is like, I'm going to piss these people off. And I love these people. I didn't want to do that. So I said, that doesn't matter. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on this because I didn't finish it, but I want to know your thoughts on this. He was saying that government you know, it's still, when money's sent into the government, it still produces jobs and GDP growth and things like that. And the fact that it's accentuating, creating other businesses that we talked about yesterday. And then I thought, but here's the problem. You guys receive money from outside aid, much like as if it was GDP coming in that you were selling, because that was aid or money coming in. That was fresh money from an outside source that was not GDP, or was not created by industry.
Right.
And I mean private industry, not government industry.
Right. It's a big difference.
Yeah. And then I realized the majority of Canadians, and this has been happening since the 70s, that's 50 plus years. And now, like, it's going to be a big deal because things are going to definitely slow down. And I want to know your thoughts on that, because is that an accurate assessment of really what is happening? Because the truth is America is stopping giving a lot of aid financially through tariffs, right? I think a lot of it was switched up through, all right, well, you know, instead of just giving you direct aid, which we still do, but that on the back end, it could be coming from China now, which would then turn the hearts of Canadians really fully to China now. And it's just like this, like I'm walking this out in my head. I'm doing a thought experiment here.
Well,
But
the general concept is, I mean, we've talked about, you know, these types of things before, in that government spending stimulates the economy when it's put into private hands. When government spending comes in the form of, you know, twice as many employees and payroll, sure, I mean, it benefits things like the housing market, because government salaries in Canada are higher than the average wages for people. So it puts pressure on the housing market and that type of stuff. But they don't build houses in Canada fast, so it's not like it's creating a manufacturing-like effect of subcontractors and then, you know, blah blah blah, like we talked about yesterday. It's not a big contributor to the GDP. Like it's a little contributor because people take their salaries and go buy stuff, and that happens. But it's not like what Canada did is they doubled the size of their government during the Trudeau administration. If they had taken that money and funded the mining and resource industry instead, their GDP probably would have doubled per person, you know, per capita, because the world is screaming for all of the mining minerals, natural resources that Canada has. And they didn't want to sell it to them because they're like, no, we're green now. We're green. We're not selling you any oil or any liquefied natural gas. I mean, all they had to do was build like 2 compressed LNG plants. Each one's a couple of $1 billion. And they would have sold billions and billions and billions of dollars to the Germans of LNG, the Japanese, the Greeks, and one other group I can't remember. Maybe the Scottish. No, they have their own natural gas. And so they wasted all that money. Instead, they got this bloated government that doesn't do anything and is slow. And then, as a corollary, the U.S. government spends a lot of money in Canada through its embassy. The embassy and its consulates, they give grant money out. And a lot of it's to benefit the United States and mostly trade with the U.S. So the U.S. does spend a lot of money in Canada for doesn't need to. And there's no better way to talk about it than how, you know, we've talked about how the U.S. essentially subsidizes their healthcare industry.
Literally, like they wouldn't have an healthcare, yet Americans don't even have like a healthcare system, which is
right. It's just
right.
It's just mind-boggling, and it's the dumbest. It's just the dumbest thing ever. And some Canadians get it. They're like, oh yeah, I understand that now. And there's a lot of study. I'm not just making this up. There's a lot of studies out there showing how Canadians pay so much less for the same pharmaceuticals we do because we're essentially paying the engineering costs on top of it, and they don't.
Creating them.
Right. And so we help them out a lot. And their northern, without our defense money, their northern border would be all Chinese and Russia right now. And they're in actually panic mode in the fact that they're increasing their NATO spending, but really what they're doing is building shipping ports up in the north, deep water ports, because as the ice melts, ships are starting to go back and forth there, and it cuts the time dramatically from Asia to Europe, going that way, and even to New York and stuff like that. So it's gonna be it's gonna be tough for Canadians unless they do the same thing that the U.S. is doing. Unless they pull manufacturing back into Canada, they've seen their manufacturing industry just all go right to China too. It's no different than here. And it's because the stores are the same. Home Depot, Canadian Tire there is the same thing as Home Depot. They buy everything. Literally, a giant ship shows up, and every container on it is for Canadian Tire from China. And
you know what's go ahead.
And they're gonna have to do the same thing too, and bring things back home, or talk to the Americans and say, you know what, we have this treaty called Beyond the Border, or I don't know if it's a treaty, it's an agreement at least, to do things collectively, like our driver's licenses and our passports and some other official documents that Canadians and the U.S. got together and said, let's just do this together. And we need to do more of those things. Maybe just act like a common economic zone. We don't have to be a 51st state. Just do like the EU does. Right.
Yeah.
And not worry about all this border bull crap.
And I think, what was it? Colette? No, not Colette. Why am I saying her Colette? She was at, I'm forgetting. We've had her on a few times.
Colia,
thank you. Why did I say Colette? She's a huge proponent in slowing down and actually making sure that you guys don't allow for immigrants to come over, which I thought was really like a strong thing, because half of your guys' nation, or half of the nation and this is what I've heard, is East Indian, or people from the Middle East. There's a huge amount of population that comes over there. A lot of
you can't even believe it. The amount of people coming from India every day was in the thousands. Legal immigrants, not illegal.
Legal. Right.
And entire towns in Canada now are Indian-speaking towns.
Or Sharia law. Sharia
law. They don't put up with that yet. That's still.
Was that, you sure? I thought she had mentioned. Right. I thought she had mentioned.
Well, those people. No, they were trying to say, hey, we want to switch to that for this town, and the Canadians were like, no, that's all bullshit. But I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised if the Canadian Human Rights Court eventually rules that, well, they're entitled to their own law, because the human. No, I'm not going to get started on that thing. That's
right. Okay. So yeah. So it's just really interesting to see what's actually happening with the West. And
it's just failed immigration policies. That's the problem. Yeah. It's all it is. And now we're seeing the after effects of it. Well, they talk about, well, you're a nation of immigrants anyway. Well, in both Canada and the U.S., let's just get past the whole indigenous people thing, and we're essentially Europeans. And then when Europe fell apart due to multiple wars and stuff, and the business of the late 1800s and early 1900s of just plague, pestilence, and disaster, more of Europeans came over and joined their family, brethren, similar like people came over. And it was easy to immigrate. I mean, it was like just another Tom and another Pedro. It's like, all right, just more of me, and doing the same thing. But now the immigration is completely different cultures, and people that don't want to come here and be an American, but they want to come here and bring their whole family and their problems from where they live and be here and get money.
That's the issue.
And that's the issue. Don't get me wrong. There's lots of people that immigrate here, like Elon Musk, who came here and says, that's a land of opportunity. I want to go there. And
I would say there's a huge amount.
There's lots of people.
They want to come here and they want to hustle. Like, they want to go to school, get a doctorate degree, and like build. Like, and we have a few billionaire kids. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a few billionaires that are literally, like you said, just like that. But it's really crazy. Maybe you guys should be a talk show.
My comment machine stopped working here. Sorry, I haven't been addressing your comments.
So one of the things that we do here
Hey,
is
76 Norton, thanks for
both.
joining us today.
Yeah, we do both. We talk about, today's stuff, what's actually happening, news. In addition to that, we talk about trading, what we're seeing, and then in addition to that, it also is mine or his opinion on these things. But when it comes down to the TA, I try to do a great job for you guys. You guys know that you can ask any time for me to look at any type of crypto. I'll do TA with that, so it keeps it open. I did want to talk about a few, but the time is already hit.
Yeah, I need to get going too, but I wanted to. My comment machine just populated all of the Rumble comments, and I didn't see any of them, including. I was wondering what you mentioned about Chuck's rant earlier. Chuck Jansen, thank you very much for the $5 rant on Rumble. We really appreciate it. Helps that algorithm let us know. And I didn't see 76 Norton making a myriad of comments. So thanks for participating. We really appreciate it. He says, Africa is actually filthy rich. Yes, I've spent a lot of time in Africa. And there is a lot of money there because there's a lot of natural resources.
Yeah, the resources.
They have a lot of natural resources. The problem is that they have a lot of corruption and no way to get rid of it. And so only about 6 people own everything in Africa.
If you could actually go through and kick out just the fraud, the waste, right? Like if you could
blockchain those whole countries, and you'll see Africa in 1 generation change.
Dude, I mean, just even like the Sudan, with that big part that is along the equator, and it's all desert. So they started going through and saying, we got to do something about this, and they literally started doing these like these half moon, I forget the name of it, but basically,
I saw that.
Talking about?
They're reclaiming the desert.
Yeah, dude, I cannot believe they say it's like a mile. They have literally a strip a mile wide, right, and across Africa, that is literally like starting to reclaim the desert or reclaim forest to the desert, and it's changing just that area. You literally see it out in space, and imagine if you could literally build. I mean, if you could have 100 miles of just all of that just being a vast forest. Would bring.
Do you see China doing that too?
Yes, but the thing is the way they're doing it is, well, they've actually changed things. So they did all with one tree, and then they realized, oh shoot, we shouldn't do that, because if one gets affected, they all get affected. So they had to change things up. But like you said, they're doing it. It's actually really cool.
Africa's a cool place. It's really interesting. It's a big place like the U.S., and it has different climates and all this type of stuff. It doesn't really have anywhere that has winter like the U.S. And I've always enjoyed my time there because you see you're like this. You leave that place, you go, what?
What was I just going through?
Right? It's just what? And I mean, when I was in Central African Republic, everyone's like, yeah, it sounds like you were a CIA officer. I'm like, no, I'm just a businessman. They sell raw meat out on the street in the sun with flies on it, and people buy it and eat it. You're on mute.
Oh, I didn't hear you, bro. No, you're on mute. I'm not on mute. You're on mute.
Check. Audio check.
I think this is the gremlins telling us we do need to get out.
Yeah.
But finish your story, then we got to jam out of here, guys.
I was saying, they're like, I was asking one of the local guys. I'm like, yeah, you can eat that? I said, we can't eat raw meat. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's no problem. You just put a lot of pepper on it. And I was like, but it's. I was confused. He goes. He points to his like swollen belly. He goes, lots of parasites in there.
Oh, snap, dog.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Pedro and I both got things to do today. I may be back on the air later covering the Ice Raid launch. I may not be. So pay attention to that. But we got to go. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. Thanks to Chuck Jansen for kicking in 5 of his hard-earned dollars here. American dollars, not Canadian dollars. We really appreciate it. Not a long show today. Not more talk than crypto. But watch out for those tariffs. The market's going to be roiling today. If you're a trader, sit this one out. Conserve your capital. Anyway, that's all we got for you today. We'll see you
Full Friday tomorrow?
I don't. Yeah, I'm not driving to Florida tomorrow. I forgot I'm not going till Sunday. So we'll be around tomorrow for something.
All right, cool. We'll have fun then.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you later.